Hey everybody, we're back to go ahead and do a iPhone 5 screen repair. This one definitely has a screen problem. You can see it's definitely shattered. It's shattered in the upper right hand corner. We're going to use a couple of tools, a pentalobe screwdriver, a couple of pry tools, a couple guitar picks here, my iSesamo trusty tool, I love that thing, and a nylon spudger, and also a Phillips screwdriver. Here's our new screen. You can see that we're missing a few things here. We'll have to take the home button, the speaker assembly, and the metal back plate off to do the replacement. If you're looking to find the most economical way, that's the way to do it without buying all the stuff attached. The first thing we're going to go ahead and do is undo the two pentalobe screwdrivers at the bottom of the phone that hold the screw to the frame. Go ahead and pull both of those out. Using our pick, we'll try to go ahead and pry the screen away. You can use a suction cup to help try to pull this off. These suction cups aren't that great, so I like to use this big tile suction cup. You can get them for a couple of bucks off eBay. We're going to do a bunch of these. This works great for it. It's great to get it started. Try again here. You can see it start to lift away. Just not having a ton of luck here. There's too many cracks in the LCD that's causing it to not get suction. So when that happens, I'll use my trusty iSesamo tool here. It's a nice thin piece of metal. We can go ahead and wiggle the screen free. Once we get that done, we'll use our plastic pick to get in there. We don't want to damage or scuff the frame of this phone. So we'll use a plastic tool to finish it off. Basically, to stick it underneath, we're going to wiggle it back and forth and start to pry the screen off. Kind of want to run them up the side of the device. If you hit a snag underneath it, just hold on and wiggle the tool back and forth and you'll pop the connection out. There are some standoffs on the back of the screen. You don't want to put a ton of force onto them because you don't want to bend them. Alright, now that we have the phone open, we're going to go ahead and undo the screen connectors, or actually the battery connector here. We're going to use this as a pry tool to kind of pry or pop the LCD open. So we're going to do the battery first. We're going to do the little connector here. There's 3 screws that hold the shield in that's on top of the battery connector. They're all Phillips screws. Now whenever you're working on an Apple product, make sure you understand exactly where the screws came from so you can put them back in the correct place. The screws out, so we can go ahead and pop the battery connector off. We're going to leave the 3rd screw in there because it's not necessary for us to remove. Using a nylon tool, we go ahead and pull the battery connector up. Next step is to undo the 4 screws that hold the shield down, that cover up the connections to the LCD and digitizer. Let's go ahead and pop all of these off. Once that happens, we can go ahead and pull the screen up. It does have a little latch on the left-hand side there. You may have to push towards the battery to get it to unpop for you. Now that we have all of those connectors up, we're going to go ahead and use our tool to pry these 3 connectors up. The one for the touchscreen, the LCD, and the front-facing camera. We can go ahead and remove that and set it aside. So what we're going to do here is actually just transition all the pieces over that we need to do. We're going to start with the bottom portion down here with these screws. Both buttons or screws that are holding down the home button need to come out, the left and the right. Once that's done, you can go ahead and pry up the metal connector off the back. And it is attached to a ribbon cable. So we're just going to use a spudger and work to pry this ribbon cable up. If you're going to use a sharp tool like I'm doing here, you want to be very gentle to not rip the ribbon cable. We're just going to work it a little bit here. Start from the opposite direction possibly. You can use a razor blade, that'll work well. Just be careful not to cut your cable. Perfect, so we got it removed. We'll go ahead and set that aside. The next step is to pry out the home button. It does have a rubber gasket that holds it into the phone frame. You don't want to rip the gasket. So we're going to use a pry tool to get this out. Before I do that, we're just going to remove the metal backplate here real fast. See if we can't get some extra room to work with it. We have one screw at the bottom, 2 screws on each side. Here's our second screw. You can see the white dots on the back of this metal panel. That's a water sensor. It's for the SIM slot tray. So if you're looking to replace that, you can do that just by removing that as well. Remove the screw from the top for the metal backplate. We're going to remove the speaker assembly as well. There's one long screw at the top that holds everything in place. With that removed, you can go ahead and remove the metal chassis and the speaker that'll pop right out. There's an additional screw right here at the top of the screen. With those removed, we should be able to go ahead and pop the metal bracket off the back. Go ahead and set that aside. Now with that done, we're going to go ahead and remove the front-facing camera, microphone, and earpiece speaker here. So one cable, so we can go ahead and just pull this off. Like so. You can see that's an assembly there. Now you can see there's a little plastic mount here. We're just going to pull this off nice and gently with our tool. Right down here at the bottom there's kind of an opening that'll sit on top of a rubber gasket. It's got some fairly sticky or solid adhesive, more like super glue style adhesive that holds this to the glass. We're going to pry it out, and I believe that everything in the phone is there for a reason, so we're going to transition this to the other back piece. There's an additional holder for the sensor. We're going to pry that out. Just want to make sure it wasn't cracked. Little metal piece popped out right here. See if we have to transition that or not. We're going to work on the home button. Just going to go ahead and push it. You can use a little bit of heat. We're just going to use our pick here to scrape the gasket up a little bit on the sides. Just being nice and gentle to pry and not pierce. And see, once we got a little edge going, we can go ahead and just pry the whole thing out. Looks like that's everything, so we'll go ahead and transition these parts to the new back plate here. Some broken glass we'll set aside. So we're going to go ahead and put the home button in. It's important that you put it in straight, because if you, the way you took it out, if you flip it over, you'll see that sometimes your square in the middle of the home button won't be lined up correctly. It'll look funny. So we're going to wiggle this one just a little bit here. I'm going to cut kind of a hole out of this plastic That way I can check on the button, but still keep my screen protected. Just going to kind of turn it a little bit. Make sure we get it lined up properly. Try to push down the adhesive that's still on the actual gasket of the button. I'm going to use a little bit of this brush-on super glue. What we're going to do is put the two plastic mounts back in place, just using a pair of tweezers. It's going to fit in just like so. The cutaway portion has a little bit of a gap at the bottom. It's going to go over the gasket facing downwards. I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of super glue on this. We don't need a lot. We don't want any spilling over. We just want to get it to be held in place. So we're going to put that just right on top and push it down. The goal is to have this pretty much put in place so the front-facing camera is held in the correct spot. Try to get it as centered as possible. And the next one is this little tiny proximity sensor holder. We're going to do the same thing. It's a little tiny super glue on the plastic portion. You'll see that it has a metal side and a plastic side. The plastic side is rounded and it'll fit into a groove right where I'm putting in now. The metal side will go down. If you need to kind of wiggle it around, you can use your little tool to do so. Make sure you get it in the right spot and then press down for just a few seconds, and that super glue will kick in for you. Here's our back. It's going to fit in just like so. Before we put that on, we're going to go ahead and remove the plastic cover across the back. And that'll give us time for our super glue to dry as we install this as well. I'm going to go ahead and put in all the screws across the back here. The one that's at the very top that was underneath the metal bracket. The two down the right and left hand side, as well as the one at the bottom here. Put the ones on the right hand side. Flip it around and put the other two screws in the opposite side. Just double check our super glue component. Looks like it's stuck down pretty good. We're going to go ahead and put the back on for the home button. Just make sure we get it in the right spot here. We need to make sure that the gold connectors will line up. If you put the two screws back in, it should line up properly. Just kind of push it down so it's in place. Put our left side screw in. Push down our ribbon cable here. Home button feels good. I always test it before I go too much further. We're going to go ahead and put the ribbon cable assembly in back at the top. Now the trickiest part of this is getting this little microphone piece here into the round slot. We're going to push this in first. I have to bend the cable out and then push it into the correct slot. You want to make sure it gets in there nice and good. Put the front facing camera in, and then everything else should line up correctly for us. We can then take our earpiece speaker assembly here in the middle housing. Put that back in the correct spot as well. It's kind of springy. You'll feel it want to kind of spring away, and that's pretty normal. So let's go ahead and hold it down. Make sure everything is lined up correctly. And then we're going to put the long screw in the top that came out. When we first disassemble it, you can see it's nice. It's a lot longer than all the rest of the screws. Go ahead and screw that in place. Make sure it's nice and snug, but don't over tighten it. You put an additional screw in down here at the bottom that we took out. Perfect. And that is our assembled display. It's a little metal piece here. You want to be careful so it's not on top of the ribbon cables that pops out. We're going to go ahead and test the screen here real fast and just make sure that it's a functional screen for us. Now this assembly has a big ding in the upper right hand corner, and that's what originally cracked the glass. It looks like the glass will not fit back in place unless we fix that ding. If it's a really, really big one, you may actually have to replace the housing on the phone, which is a big pain in the butt. If it's something smaller like this one, I think we can fix it. We're just going to try to cut away the bent-in metal. You can see the ding right there at the upper right-hand corner. Just going to power the device on here real fast. Forgot to put the battery connector down. That might be helpful to help it power on. Alright, we'll just let it boot up to the screen here real fast. It's definitely working for us. There we go. You can see that we have a fully functional screen. Now the home button won't work for us because we're not hitting the contacts underneath. So just testing the touch functions. Alright, now that we know that our screens work, so I went ahead and pulled it off. We're going to remove this ding. I'm just going to use a X-Acto knife to do this. Just using it really close. You can use a razor blade. And what we're going to do is we're going to shave the metal away until we get it to the correct fit. Normally if it gets a ding, the metal's pretty pliable at that point, so it's pretty thin. Like I was saying, if it's a really big ding, you may have to actually replace the housing to get the glass to go in. It doesn't look like this one's as big. We'll flip the housing over to see if it fits the rounded corner. We'll try that again here real fast. And I think this is a better representation of what you have to go through to replace a screen on a phone where it has a cracked glass. Normally, if it's got something cracked, it's got a big ding in the phone as well. So this is an easy way to fix it, as long as you can get it to that rounded side. It's looking pretty good. The other thing that you can do is if you have a round tool that's the exact same basically round portion of the side of the phone, is you can put that in and then kind of hammer it out into a round shape again. We're going to test it here real fast and see if it will fit back in place for us. Let's get rid of all those metal shavings under the phone there. Sometimes these cables can be a little bit tricky to get in. You want to be nice and firm when you're pressing on them, but not forceful. You don't want to push them too hard. You can damage the connectors. We have our shield here. I'm going to go ahead and put that on next. Can be a little tricky if you're not propping the screen open with something. Just going to put our first screw in. There's number 1. Go ahead and put the additional screw in now. One more. So now we're going to try to press it in place to see if it'll fit with the shaving that we've done. It's looking pretty good. It just a little bit more looks like is what needs to come out. It just doesn't want to fit perfectly back in. There's a little bit of a gap up here at the top. We're going to shave just a little bit more off. Now you want to be very careful to not nick any cables or any part of the circuit board on the inside of the device while you're doing this. So make sure you have a nice steady hand. There's a little bit of a flange here on the screen that is holding it from clicking in place. We're just going to shave that off as well. And with that done, it looks like it's going to fit right back in place for us. We're just going to power the device on as we wiggle this back into place. We don't want to distort or damage the LCD too much. It may take a little bit of manhandling to get back in place. I'm not being extremely forceful. I'm just trying to get it back into the spot where I want it. Just checking the top gap here. Everything looks fine. It's been a little tricky down here at the bottom. We're going to try one more time here real fast. So push extremely firm at the top, into the bottom down here. Then we're going to try to snap it on the side here as well. There we go. We got a snap in place. We got a little bit of a plastic push off there. You can see that it's nice and firm here at the top corner, which is what we're looking for. Phone's powering back on. Go ahead and put the 2 pentalobe screws in the bottom of the phone. Like I was saying, this is a good real-world example of how to replace a screen, where it's not just a brand new phone being disassembled and put back together. You can see exactly what needs to be done for everything to fit back into place. So it's putting our screws back in with our pentalobe screwdriver here. Now, if you found this video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments. If you want to see more videos from me, hit the subscribe button, and I post a couple every week. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.